Good morning. My name is Kyle Gatlin. I'm pastor here, and I don't know if you noticed it or not, Christmas is coming. Did y'all notice that? I was coming back Thursday night from the other side of Alabama, coming back through 65 across 84, and I mean, there's already Christmas decorations. I mean, there's some houses that look like Macy's storefront window. I mean, they're just up everywhere. I mean, that was Thanksgiving night. I mean, Christmas is here. I mean, we got trees up here, so we're announcing to you that Christmas is coming, and you know Christmas is coming when you turn to 98.5 out of Panama City. Christmas music 24/7. I think they started last week or something like that. I don't know. It's this month, the next 4 weeks, that Hallmark's going to have more viewers combined than the whole previous year, right? Also, just want to make sure everybody knows this is a public service announcement that Freeform starts their 25 Days of Christmas movies this week. I know you're excited. You're excited about that. But Die Hard is not in the lineup. I am so sorry. I am so sorry that Die Hard will not be in the lineup this year. But it's Christmas. We're getting ready. We're getting ready. My wife already told me, this was like last week, wherever we scheduled our trip to come back from my Thanksgiving trip over to my mom's family, and we get in the habit now of coming back Thanksgiving night, because she already told me, we're getting Christmas decorations out, on Friday. And of course we did, but she had already started some of them, but we got most of them up, and because we're hosting a Christmas party next week, so she wanted everything to be up, because we're getting ready. We're getting ready for Christmas, getting ready for the staff party and stuff, and there's an outside room that I have at my house where I'm storing Christmas stuff. We have done some stuff inside, but really the outside room, I keep most of the stuff either in the attic or downstairs in that room, and that room is sort of my room. Yeah, it's sort of a junk room too, but I got my exercise bike in there. I know it looks like I use it all the time, right? No. It's out there. I do use it ever since my knee surgery. I use it, but I got it facing the big screen TV. That's the only way I can do it. Facing the big screen TV, because I don't have room for that TV in the house now, and I don't have cable, don't have satellite, so that is on an antenna, and it usually stays on 4.2, Memorable Entertainment Television, MeTV. And a lot of times I schedule my exercise around when Andy Griffith comes on, or MASH, or Hogan's Heroes. Those are the ones I like to watch. I try to do that. But many times I'm going out there and it's not at the right time. I get on the bike and I flip on MeTV. That's the default really when it comes on, it's MeTV. And the A-Team shows up. I mean, it's on all the time on that station. And A-Team is one I did watch when I was in college, when I had access to a TV wherever I was staying at the time. I did watch that, like that show, and sort of like the whole premise of it, as far as these guys spend pretty much, the show's like 45, 50 minutes long, and they spend the majority of that time planning and preparing for the end. And you have to wait to the end of the show, literally like 5 minutes till the hour, before you figure out if all their planning and preparation would work out. And it always does. Right? End of the show always does. Same thing with the Liam Neeson movie. End of the show, it always works out. And of course, Hannibal, at the very end, sticks the cigar in his mouth and says, "I love it when a plan comes together." Love it when a plan comes together. Well, what we're looking at in this season is the first A-Team. When God was getting ready for that first Christmas. There was a lot of planning. There was a lot of preparation that went into that first Christmas. And I know when we think about Christmas, our first thoughts are always about Jesus. But initially, the first phase of this planning and preparation for Christmas did not directly involve Jesus. And we find this story in Luke chapter 1, verse 5. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah, who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth, was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. So this initial phase in planning for that first Christmas, two unlikely people are tapped: Elizabeth and Zechariah. Two very unlikely people, particularly when you know the rest of the story, right? And I'm reminded that when God wants to do something, many times he uses the godly. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to use the godly for his purposes, for his will to be done. He doesn't have to use anybody, but he chooses to. He chooses to use his creation. He chooses to use his people. And many times he chooses to use the godly. God, he's getting ready to start something new. We know that. We got the benefit of hindsight. Hindsight's always 20/20, and we got the benefit of knowing that God is getting ready to start something new. He's getting ready to send his son to start something new, to literally expand the family of God. That's what's getting ready to happen. And he uses a pattern that seems sort of familiar to those of us who know our Old Testament history. A couple, an older couple who has followed God their whole life, well past their childbearing years. That's who he taps to use. Just thinking about this culture at this time, for couples that are having trouble having children, it can be viewed as God doesn't have his blessing on you. God has cursed you. It was that type of cultural thing going on at that time. So it would not be a stretch for people in this situation, Zechariah and Elizabeth. It would not be a stretch for them to simply give up on God. To say, God's given up on me, and so I will give up on God. Abraham and Sarah from Genesis were in the same boat. What would happen to them? Well, they laughed about being pregnant, and that didn't go over real well, but they started a nation. In their older age, way beyond childbearing years, they started a nation. They had continued to believe God all during the process. Because remember the story, they were told when they were about 20 years younger than they ended up being when Isaac was born. They were told, and they had to wait 20 years, so they had to continue to be faithful to God during those years in waiting for their son to be born. Elizabeth and Zechariah stayed true to God their whole life. Zechariah was a priest, and descendants of Aaron, that's sort of what they did. That was sort of their lot in life. They were slotted to do that, and Zechariah embraced that. He embraced that calling to be a priest. And whenever the time came for him to take a turn at the temple, he gladly went and took his turn. Year after year, Zechariah did this. Year after year, he took on the responsibility when he was supposed to and fulfilled them over and over again. He was faithful to God. He served God his entire life. And this kept him in a position to be used by God. Remember what I read. Both of them, Elizabeth and Zechariah, were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. There's a reason that Luke puts that in there. He could have just said, hey, Zechariah and Elizabeth, hey, they were old and they had a baby, right? He didn't do that. He made sure to let us know who they were, that they as a couple were righteous in the sight of the God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. I think he put that in there, truthfully, for our benefit, but I think there's a segment of the people that were reading this that had heard, that knew their story, that knew their backstory, that they were older and without kids, and were probably thinking, what did Zechariah and Elizabeth do in their younger years that would cause them not to be able to have children? And Luke, I think, put that in there to make sure, hey, they did nothing. They lived their whole life as a couple blamelessly. All their life. And what I like about this, it did say Elizabeth was part of that, of the Aaron lineage, but still Zechariah was the priest here. And what I love is Elizabeth was not one of these spouses that said, Zechariah, you go do you and I'll do me. And you do you from 9 to 5 as long as you're home every night. And my husband, I'm cool with that as long as you're home every weekend. I don't care what you do 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But as long as you come home, you do whatever you want. I'll do me, I'll do you. No, she was in this with him. They were blameless. You know, it's difficult. We have people, you know people, that both spouses are not on the same page. You have one spouse that is seeking to follow God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. I mean, they're sold out. The other spouse, you do that, you're fine. I won't get in your way type thing. And that's difficult. That's difficult for some spouses. And I've seen some spouses that were all in that over the course of their lifetime got pulled away because it was a matter of, I got to make my spouse, I got to have a happy life in my household, right? So that's difficult. So when both spouses are on the same page, man, it makes the spiritual journey just a hair bit easier. Our spiritual journey is never easy peasy. But when we have both going in the same direction, both heading to God, loving God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, man, that makes that day-to-day journey just a little bit easier. They were in this together. They understood what Ecclesiastes says, 2 are better than 1. They understood that. And it's my hunch that the reason that they were able to stick through this for the long haul is because they had each other and because they were both pulling in the same direction. And because they had placed themselves in this position, God used them. God used them. Are you in a place where God can use you? That's my question for you to think about. Are you in a place where God can use you? Have you positioned yourself in such a way that when God speaks, you can hear? When God speaks, you'll be ready to listen. You'll be ready to follow through. Man, a lot of times we just get in a huge hurry. You know, we say, God, I want you to use me now. I want you to use me in a mighty way. I want you to use me to make a difference. God, just show me, push me, throw me into it. You want it all right now. Boom. Get it over with, God. And I'm ready. I'm eager. But let me tell you, the church, the big church, not little church, but the big church of God is built on people like Elizabeth and Zechariah. People who sold out their lives to God, no matter their circumstances in life. Some of us leave God because of circumstances in our life. For Elizabeth and Zechariah, they gave us the example of no matter what the circumstances in life, all in. I'm all in. Living for Jesus is not contingent on doing something, quote unquote, great as the world sees things. Living for Jesus is not doing something great as far as maybe a church member sees things. Living for Jesus and being great may simply be the way God sees it. Blameless, righteous, daily life. And I believe if we can follow this example, we will be ready when God calls. We'll be ready to do something. It may seem out of the ordinary. It may be something that is just in line with our daily lives. It may be doing something that's just simply natural in the course of life, which is what happened to Zechariah and Elizabeth. Have a baby. That was what God called them to do. Yeah, they're a little bit old, so what? It's sort of a natural thing for people to have a baby. They just were way beyond childbearing years. So that made it a little bit different. Here's the story, verse 11 in chapter 1 of Luke. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. This is Zechariah. He's in the temple doing his job. When Zechariah saw him, by the way, his name is Gabriel, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He is never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord." There's a lot in here when Zechariah learns that he's going to be a father and learns who this child is going to be. But notice, the first thing that Gabriel said, your prayer has been answered. Your prayer has been answered. Elizabeth and Zechariah have been praying for a child. I don't know if they've stopped. I don't know how long they've been praying. Probably a very long time. And all those years of daily being right where God wanted them to be, doing exactly what God wanted them to do, and now comes the blessing. Now comes the prayer being answered. And for us, a lot of times after a week of praying, we go, "What's up? What's up, God? Come on. It's been a week. Do something." Their whole life, decades of praying before theirs was answered. But not only are their prayers get answered, they actually get a bonus because their child, their son that is to be born, is going to have a greater role to play in God's story. And this role that he is to play as a proclaimer, he's not going to be, at 18 years old, he does not automatically graduate with a degree in speaking, right? He's not going to have that supernatural gift bestowed on him at 18. A spider's not going to bite him. An engine blast is not going to give him power. He's not going to drink a herb, right? Something's got to happen to get him to that point of being the person that is getting people ready for Jesus. Getting people ready for Jesus. This child was going to be the one that would come before Jesus to get people prepared for the Messiah. Before that happened, he had to be prepared. So the preparer, John the Baptist, had to be prepared. Had to be prepared. And Elizabeth and Zechariah were the perfect ones to do this. Why? Because of the way they had been living their whole life. blameless and righteous each and every day. So a second nature thing was for them to raise their child the same way they had been living. You know, parents always expect more for their kids. We always want our kids to do better than us. We hope our kids are smarter than us. For some of us, that's easy to do, right? We hope our kids will learn from our mistakes. Hopefully they will grow from them. But how would you like to be the parent that is told this? Before your child is born, this child will be great in the sight of the Lord. How would you like to be that parent? Nice pressure, isn't it? A little pressure on you, right? You imagine waking up each and every day, all right, God said this child will be great in the sight of the Lord. Going to bed every night, God said this child will be great in the sight of the Lord. Did they ever tell him? You think they ever told John, you'll be great in the sight of the Lord? I would think they would at some point, and here's what I think. I think it came out probably in a time that wasn't so good. Like when the neighbor came to report, hey, you know John's been playing ding-dong ditch on me all day, all right? And I can imagine the parents say, John, is this what great looks like? Or when he talked back to him one day, is this what great in the sight of the Lord looks like, John? Or when he brought a C home in Hebrew, you know? Is this what great really looks like? Day in and day out, listen, they were pouring in to John. They were getting him ready so he can get the people ready. They were just pouring into him. Who are you pouring into? Seriously. Who are you pouring into? You may not like that question because the default for many of us is, well, me. I'm pouring into me. It's all about me. It's about what makes me happy. It's what makes me feel good. I work hard. I'll spend my money on me. And parents, I know, are out there going, well, I'm pouring myself into my kids. I'm pouring myself into my family. Which leads me to ask a follow-up question. What are you pouring? What are you pouring? Elizabeth and Zechariah, it was pretty simple. They were not to pour alcohol in their household, right? That dude's not having alcohol. Yeah, the Spirit's going to be with him too, but for them it was simply, they just kept on being themselves. They kept on being themselves because they were sold out to God each and every day. And remember what happens in families. It's not what is taught, it's what is caught. It's what's caught. So if you give a half-hearted effort of following Jesus, your kids will probably end up being quarter-hearted effort to following Jesus. This thing where our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, when they get to that age, they start being less interested in church or organized religious activities. This is not just in our church. It's really it's really just churches everywhere. But it's been really easy to see the majority of those, when that happens, they're just following the example of their parents. Who are you pouring into? What are you pouring? You see, when you're sold out to Jesus, that this really should be happening. All of us should be doing this. We should be pouring into someone else if we're sold out to Jesus. And it doesn't matter what age we are. Do it as a 10-year-old. We can do it as a 30-year-old or do it as an 80-year-old. If we're sold out to Jesus, we should be pouring into others. You think of the difference that we can make if all of us just had one person that we were pouring into, pouring life into them, letting them see the way that we are all in and following Jesus with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and they catch that. And they catch that. So John's going to be born. And his parents will be raising him in a way that honors God. And he's going to spend many years getting ready. He's going to spend many years getting ready. And if you thought that getting ready for Christmas just involved in this moment, this 10 or 12 month process, Zachariah and Elizabeth, it actually started before that. We find this in the book of Isaiah. In the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places plain, and the glory of the Lord be revealed, and all people will see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. See, John was a part of the plan for centuries. John coming was part of the plan long before Zachariah and Elizabeth were notified. John was being talked about. This person, this coming before the Messiah, was talked about almost in the same breath as the Messiah. Hey, the Messiah's coming, but before that, a prophet's going to come to make ready. So when John was born, I can imagine, this is my way of thinking of things. God's looking down, and as John enters the world, and he's crying, and Elizabeth is holding him, and Zechariah is there, I can imagine God looking down and going, man, I love it when a plan comes together. You see, we hear this again, truthfully, in the book of Malachi. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. I will send my messenger. You know when Malachi was written? 400 plus years before John the Baptist was born. And in this interim time, it was called the silent period because there was no prophets. There was nothing going on for 400 plus years. But Malachi has said, I will be there. I will have that messenger there. So Elizabeth and Zechariah give birth to this messenger. They give birth to the messenger. And when it comes time to name this child, Elizabeth said his name's going to be John. And all the neighborhood folk that were there for the naming of this child said, you can't do that. There's nobody in your family whose name is John. Tradition was you give a family name to your children and keep passing that family name on. My son's name is named after me. He's the second. And then he's given his name Sterling to his second child. So we do it. They did it as well, but it was a big deal to name the child after somebody in your family. Zechariah, I didn't tell you this story, that part of this story, but Zechariah, when Gabriel appeared to him and said, hey man, you're going to be a daddy, Zechariah was almost like Abraham and just laughed about it, and he really doubted. And when he doubted that this was coming to pass, Gabriel said, well, that's going to be the last word you ever say, and he shut him up. So Zechariah didn't speak the whole pregnancy. If you think about, he was probably not able to speak anywhere between 10, 11, or 12 months that he could not speak. And so Zechariah's there, it was Elizabeth's best year of her life. So Elizabeth finally, has the child. Zechariah was there for the naming. Still can't talk yet. And he writes down this. His name is John. And immediately, he's able to speak. And he starts telling them basically what's transpired the last 12 months about the angel and about who this child's going to be. And the whole story that involved all three of them. What had gone on in that whole time. We read this. All the neighbors were filled with awe. And throughout the hill country of Judea, people were talking about all these things. Everything that Zechariah had told them. Gabriel, Elizabeth, the baby. We'll find out some more about how Elizabeth and Mary interacted during this time too. Right? Everyone who heard this wondered about it, asking, what then is this child going to be? For the Lord's hand was with him. Well, Zechariah knew, and Elizabeth knew what he was going to be. He was part of God's bigger plan. He was part of God's bigger plan. A plan to bring humanity back to God. A plan to bring the family, to expand the family, to bring more people into the family. Where do you see yourself in God's plan? Where do you see yourself in God's plan? And I know some of you going, I can't see beyond Christmas Day right now, man. I got so much going on, man. I can't see anything beyond that. I understand that. But where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in God's plan? God desires each one of us to be a part of his family. That's why we have Christmas. To open up the family to every one of us and more. Where do you see yourself in God's plan? You see, if you and I are all in, that we're living each day for God, living each day with Jesus at the forefront of our minds, our thoughts and our actions are all about honoring Jesus. Then we are placing ourselves in a position to be used by God. We're putting ourselves in the position to be used by God in this family. And when we are used by God and we're making a difference in at least one other person's life, we're sharing the love of God. We're sharing God's grace and the hope and his mercy, and we're telling others the difference that he has made in my life. Then you're part of the plan. You're doing your part as part of God's plan. So you can be like Zechariah and Elizabeth and be part of his plan, just daily living for him, being godly each and every day, pouring yourself into another person. And I can see when God's family gets together and worships and encourages each other and telling about his love and his grace, I can see him up there looking down now and saying, I love it when a plan comes together. Let's pray. God, we have a lot of doubts about where we fit in our world today. We're taking it a day at a time. We're wondering how you're using us. We're wondering if we're in the right place. Are we even in the right church? So we have all this going through our minds. And you simply say to each and every one of us, you have a place. And in this place, I will use you. You are part of the plan. So God, I ask that you would help us. Help us to realize that we are a part of your family. That in these days ahead, you desire for us to follow hard after you each and every day. And when we do that, and we're faithful to you, trust that you will use us where you need us. Pour out your grace. And may that grace flow through us to so many people who have yet to hear or experience it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.